nowadays, time, yes.
That's it. Sorry, my lovely. Yes, sorry, carry on, Barbara.
No, I'm saying time doesn't mean anything nowadays. It's just the same day every day, you know? When you
It's
get to a certain age, everything just stands still. So I'm lucky to be at that stage now.
Oh,
Yes.
bless you, Barbara. Well, so you look fabulous as always. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh,
I thought I'd wear my Rasta colors today for your interview. So
I'm
you got it. You got it.
delighted because we're going to talk about that anyway, Barbara. So, but this is all
Okay.
about you today, Barbara. You know, I know we know each other, but this is all about you. So, you know, there's
Thank
a
you.
few questions I'm going to ask, but you can talk as long as you like, because it's, you know, I want everybody to hear about you that doesn't know you. If they don't know you, then they've been living on another planet because they should know about you, Barbara.
Thank you so much. This is a wonderful opportunity you're giving me. I've decided I'm going to use the opportunity to launch this book. I'm going to launch this book in your interview. So
Please
you will
do.
know when to mention it. Yes, this is my new book. And this is like the first copy I've got from the press. This is it. Yes,
Oh my
yes.
goodness, I'm honored.
I'll make sure you get a copy. I'll send you a copy shortly, okay?
Thank you so
I
much, Barbara.
I was going to keep it till February, which is Jamaican Black History Month, but I thought, no, this is too good an opportunity to
I
miss.
couldn't agree
Thank
with
you.
you more. And what I'll do is I'll put a link at the bottom as well so that people can go on and buy it. A friend of mine has bought your other book, you know, You're Growing Out. I messaged him
Oh,
and he said that
lovely,
he's going to be featuring you for his company anyway. So I'll send you that when it
lovely.
comes out as
Thank you,
well,
thank
Barbara.
you,
So
thank you,
this is all
thank
about
you.
you. So just for anybody that doesn't know, I'll just say just a few things. So I'm with the beautiful Barbara Blake Hannah, and affectionately known as the Empress. So
Oh, I love it.
and you're more than welcome, Barbara. And so, for anyone that doesn't know, Barbara was our first Black TV reporter in the UK. She was a journalist with Thames TV. There's a long list of things. So, this is just a few of the things that Barbara has done. She's also an author. She has done PR for the film industry. One of the notable films being The Harder They Come, featuring Jimmy Cliff. I'm sure most people will have heard of that one. She lives the Rastafarian faith, and we will talk about that as well. And she was also the first Rastafari rep in the Jamaican Parliament. So that's just a few of Barbara's achievements here. But now I'm just going to ask a few questions, Barbara, and you just talk away. So my first question is, who is Barbara Blake Hannah? Tell me who you are. Tell everyone who you are.
Well, I'm basically a journalist. I'm a Jamaican girl. I'm not even a woman yet. I'm still a Jamaican girl because you don't really grow up when you're a Jamaican. You're always growing. You're always growing. You never become a full adult, it seems. There's always so much happening. You're growing like your country is growing. So I'm a Jamaican girl who found, because I grew up, probably because my father was a journalist and a magazine editor, I grew up knowing I could write. I wrote from I was at school. I remember doing an essay in fourth form on the topic blue that our English teacher had given us. And it was so talked about that people shared it in the other high schools around town. It got shared with the boys' schools and the girls' schools. And it made me realize, hey, I can write. So that's good. I can earn a living as a writer. And I've done that all my life in various ways, as a secretary, as a PR, as a journalist writing my own articles, as a journalist doing radio and television interviews. I've always been a writer, a journalist. I still am, I'm still doing it, still doing it.
So it's in
Yes.
your blood.
Yes, it is. Printer's ink is in my blood. Definitely.
Oh, I love
Yes.
that. So that was going to be, I mean, you've nearly answered, gone to my next question, but how did you get into journalism? Because I know you mentioned that your father was in that industry. So what attracted you to it? Or was it just something that you thought would be a natural thing for you to go into?
Well, I was born when my father had started editing a magazine called Spotlight, which became the leading news magazine, monthly news magazine, not just in Jamaica, but the Caribbean. He'd started it 2 years before I was born. And I grew up every day knowing that Daddy was a journalist. He lived on his typewriter. He lived in his office where the magazine was produced. And that was it. I grew up knowing that every day. When we grew a little older, we went down to the office each month to wrap magazines and help post them out to the subscribers. Um, Sometimes we got taken with him for interviews. I remember when the Federation, there was a referendum for the Federation. We must have been about 10 years old. And Daddy took us in his car. By then he was divorced. So he was a single father, took us in the car to go and visit the Bustamante, whose party had won the referendum. And I remember him going into this huge celebratory party, champagne, noise. And he came back out and said, no, that's not where my story is. And he drove us to Manley's house. Manley had lost the Federation, his party, and it was quiet and rather sad. And Daddy said, this is where my story is. And we stayed there the night. We fell asleep in his car. And I learned what being a journalist was all about. It wasn't about going to parties. It was about going to the story. And I knew that from the age of 10. So I've always been a writer. I've always been a journalist. I'm glad to say. Now I'm an author. I'm even more glad to say, because those works stay. You can put those works in a library on a shelf. People can go into shops and buy it or order from Amazon, as the case may be. So I'm proud to
Memorialized
be
in print forever, Barbara, isn't it? Once you write, it's memorialized forever. So, and that's
nowadays, fortunately, yes, yes, yes.
oh,
Yes, indeed. Thanks to the internet, everything now remains forever. I'm glad to say,
yeah,
yes.
that is a good thing. What was some of the notable interviews that your father did? Do you remember any? Are any sort of that really stick with you, or?
Everything, because he knew all the Caribbean's politicians. He knew the prime minister of every single Caribbean country. They often came to the house. They certainly came to his office. And sometimes he went to their countries to interview them. When Fidel Castro's revolution succeeded and Fidel opened the doors of Cuba, he was one of the few journalists from the Caribbean invited. And he went to Cuba. He went to Britain, he went to America, he went all over the world. So I think maybe the interview I remember best is with Fidel Castro. I mean, I love Fidel, so of course I would have loved my father's interview with him.
Yeah.
And at the time, of course, there was a lot of negatives surrounding Castro, but my father wasn't negative about him at all. There was another time he did a complete issue. He devoted it to Rastafari, way, way back before, anybody thought anything respectable about Rasta. Claudius Henry had been arrested with his son, who later was hanged for treason. And it was quite a huge story. That's whole business of the Rastafari, the effort to overthrow the government. And he devoted a whole issue to Rastafari.
Yeah.
I remember Rastas would come, walk along Harbour Street selling brooms or pots and usually be turned away. But he would always stop and invite them up the stairs and, buy a broom, buy a pot. And he didn't say anything to us, but it made me realize these were people who could be respected just like anybody else, anybody else selling something that he wanted to buy.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from my father's um, impartiality with everybody. He was equally happy to meet. I mean, he would always get invited to King's House. The governor was always a white Englishman. And most of the time he wouldn't bother to go. He would be the only black man invited. But most of the time he couldn't be bothered. He'd throw the invitation down in the living room. He'd say, well, at least they invited me.
Yes,
But he would make the Rasta man come up the stairs and say, good morning, what you have? Oh, you have some pears you're selling? Is this a nice one? It ripe yet? All right, have a good day. I learned that impartiality for my life. Very useful.
Very useful, as you say. Oh, how wonderful. And you carry that, as you say, all the way through when you have your own children, then, you know, it's that kind of spirit. You can see that's the person that you are, you know, so you carry that through as well, don't you? You know, once you have your
Yes,
own
you
family.
do. The
So,
basic lessons you learn from your parents they never go. They
yes,
never go,
they're
you
the best
know?
lessons. That's right.
That's why I don't beat my child. I don't beat my child. It shows him that with anger, you're allowed to be violent if you're angry.
Yeah.
And you know, I would also try not to be angry at things he did. I try to find out why he did these things and explain to him why he couldn't or shouldn't, you
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
I think that was very useful to the person. The son I've grown is a very loving, very highly intelligent person
Yes.
without those kind of negatives associated. I mean, it was hard for him to live with a single mother. We had a really rough time growing up. He endured a lot. I wouldn't say suffered. He endured a lot, but he's remained stable because he didn't grow with hatred. He grew with love.
And
You
that's
know.
from you, yeah, of course, and that's from you. It's radiating from you, Barbara. You can see that. So, you know, that
Darling.
is very
Rasta
lucky.
teach me these things, darling. Rasta teach me love. Rasta teach me love, so much more important than hate. Rasta, when Bob Marley tells you Rasta is about peace and love, it's really the truth. It's
Yes.
really about learning that love, which is what the Christ came here to teach us. The Christus's message was love. You
Yeah,
know, that was the message he brought. So Rasta teach that message too. Haile Selassie teach us that. We come back to that. It's the world is love or hate.
I
Full
agree.
stop. It's everything. I mean, even things like loving your country enough not to litter it. Everything is love and hate. You
Yeah.
hate your country, so you fling the bottle out the car window, you know, oh, this damn country. But
Yes.
love or hate in everything, in everything. It's what the world is about. I wish we could learn more of love.
I
We'd have
agree.
a perfect world, you know.
I
Ah, boy.
totally agree, Barbara. Love conquers all, as they say, don't they? You know, but we're living in some strange times. So you know, but I agree with you with that. So Barbara, so what led you to come to the UK? How did you end up in the UK?
Well, first of all, everybody was emigrating. You know, Jamaica is a small country, and you know, round about independence, everybody wanted. Well, we all always want to see the world. Windrush happened because there were people who didn't have jobs and heard there were jobs in England, so they went to look for those jobs. So Windrush had started a trend of immigration to England in the 50s, and in the 60s, I was working now. I got my first job as a journalist in the PR company, in the PR department of an advertising agency. And while I was there, a girlfriend of mine, whose name was Beverly Anderson, and people will remember Beverly Anderson because she later married Michael Manley and became First Lady of Jamaica. But then she was working with a film company, and she called me and said, "Hey, they're making a movie here and they want some Spanish speaking elders. Don't you speak a little Spanish?" And I had some from school and I had a good Spanish teacher. So I got a job as an extra in this movie called A High Wind in Jamaica, about a pirate who stops in Jamaica on his way carrying some children back to England. And there we were, where he stops is a bar, and there are ladies of the night at the bar. And I was one of the ladies of the night. Yeah, would you believe?
Oh wow.
I didn't want to act too well to make people think I knew from experience. I got to speaking with the wardrobe mistress, and she was very nice. She turned out to be the wife of the director. And because we become friends, she said, "Hey, we're taking some extras back to England with us for continuity scenes. Would you like to be one of them?" And sure, I said, yes. What a wonderful opportunity to go to England without having to pay an airline ticket. And that's what took me to England. So I was there. Beverly Anderson also was one of the three ladies taken. So there we were, and we thought we'd stay in England. Beverly had a sister who was already living there. And we thought, hey, let's see what it's all about. And we stayed. Beverly, after a year, got really fed up with England, didn't like the racism, and she decided to go back home, which was good. She went back, continued working with the film company, which was Perry Hensel, who later made The Harder They Come. And that was Beverly, later married Michael Manley. I stayed and said, well, I'm a journalist. I'll get a job as a journalist. And that's what I set out to do and to be in England.
Yeah.
I had to start out by using my typing and shorthand skills as a secretary. I was a temporary secretary for the first year and a half I was in England. And that made me learn a lot about England,
Yeah.
literally almost geographically around London and, surrounding London, and what racism was all about. It taught me the fact that I was never going to get a decent place to live. It was always going to be some ghetto, you know, corner somewhere, terrible place, but make it as good as you can, because you're never going to get better. You're Black and, you're inferior. So I did that for a while and decided to apply as a secretary with the people who handled the PR for Jamaica, the Jamaica tourism and the Jamaican government. And I got a job there and decided to take the Institute of Public Relations exams to prove that I could do public relations. And I took the exams, I passed them, and the company said, okay, Barbara, we'll upgrade you, and eventually gave me the job as the PR executive for Jamaica and Jamaican tourism. So there is where I really was able to branch out as a journalist. I gave the suggestion to the Sunday Times to do a feature on Jamaican food, which I wrote, gave them. Well, so I got the Sunday Times to commission me to do an article on Jamaican food. And I cooked the food. I did ackee and saltfish with rice and peas. I even made a coconut cream pie, would you believe? And they published the article with a nice picture of me in Jamaican costume. And that opened the door to Fleet Street for me. I got accreditation as a member of the National Union of Journalists, and then I could really write. The Sunday Times commissioned me to write a couple more articles. They had a nice series, Me and My Money, where they would interview celebrities about their wealth. And they commissioned me. I did two. I did one with Sammy Davis Jr. He was in England filming at Pinewood. And it was nice to meet him again. I'd met him once in Jamaica and he remembered. I didn't think he'd even remember, but he did. And then I did one with Jacqueline Suzanne. She was an American author who'd written Valley of the Dolls, that infamous book. And she had a new book out and I got to interview her. I remember her showing me, she was so proud to show me. She said, just a minute, I've got to show you what my husband just gave me. She went in, came out in a coat. It just looked like an ordinary canvas coat, but she opened it up and it was lined with mink. And I remember saying, oh, wow, that's the most luxurious thing I've ever seen in my life. An entire coat lined with mink. Jacqueline Suzanne, lovely lady, lovely lady. So I wrote articles. I wrote articles for Vogue, for Queen, for what was that one for women? I forget that one. I wrote articles. While I was doing that, of course, it made me want to do more journalism rather than PR. Taking journalists to Jamaica to report on our beaches was nice, but there was more to life than that. Yeah. So I saw that a new television company was opening up in London, Thames Television, and I thought they probably will need journalists. I applied for a job. They interviewed me, made me do an on-camera presentation. And 3 weeks later, they called and said, we'd like to offer you a job as an on-camera reporter. And I thought, okay, why not? I'd done some TV in Jamaica, read the news a couple of times, hosted a quiz show. No big thing, okay. And that was the beginning of, the story that made me so famous that you know about me. Yes. Becoming the first Black person reporting on current affairs on British television.
It's amazing, amazing. And I know you briefly touched on the racism, you know, that was around then. I know it's well documented, and I know you talk about it in your book, and I've seen several articles about it. How was that for you, Barbara? Did you, it's almost like, I guess we kind of expect it, but how was it for you to deal with something like that?
Well, in the beginning, you expected the white people not to like you. I mean, I'd been brought up to at a time when we black people were considered ourselves inferior to white people. We've been taught, you know, the white man is superior, white people are, and you're black. So I came expecting that inferiority. But to live with racism was something I was just not accustomed to. I had been brought up as I was a well brought up Jamaican. I'd been educated at the best school. In fact, at school, there were 100 girls, 90 of whom were white. Girls from the upper classes in Jamaica, wealthy girls from the other islands, Cuba, Haiti, Colombia, the Dutch islands. They all sent their children to this very upper class school. I had an intelligent father. I mean, I lived well. We had a house. We had our own bedrooms as children. We had maids. We had a gardener. You know, I was a proper person. So I didn't enjoy having to live as if I wasn't, as if I was accustomed to being, you know, a street level person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
racism was hard to accept. Racism is something you Black British all live with every day. I just couldn't accept it. And right at the time that I got that job, Black Power was happening in America. The whole Black Power movement was rising up. Malcolm X, the Black Panthers, Angela Davis, Martin Luther King, all of that was happening in America at the time and making us Black people realize that this inferiority complex wasn't really a natural thing. You were allowed to fight against it. You were allowed to feel the right to be equal. And of course, everything that was happening in America, we were seeing and hearing about. So it's kind of made me even more annoyed with the racism that I was living with.
Mm.
And eventually I just decided, you know, I'd had enough. I had a really good opportunity. I was working then at the BBC, a good job in the production side of the Man Alive program, which is the leading current affairs program each week. And I'd been sent to do a film on the Cannes Film Festival. It was my suggestion because I had friends who had a film in the festival, and I'd suggested it to the program meeting, and they said, okay. And so I went and did the Cannes Film Festival. When I came back, I got a call from the people Beverly Anderson was working with. Perry Hensel had just made a film called How Do They Come? And Chris Blackwell, who would help finance it, called me up and said, Barbara, we'd like you to do the PR to launch this film in Britain and Jamaica. I went to see the film and I was just astonished because it showed a Jamaica I didn't know. I didn't know anything about reggae. I didn't know anything about Rasta. And I was like open-eyed at this new vision of Jamaica. The nicest thing about doing the job was that it flew me back to Jamaica for the premiere. And oh, that was a historic moment in Jamaica because traffic shut down in the center of the town of Kingston as everybody tried to get into the cinema to see the film. People sat three to a seat, I'm told. I am told because I didn't get in. I had the seating plan and I didn't get in. Fortunately, I'd already seen the film, but the event was historic for Jamaica. 50 years later, it's still one of the most important things that ever happened in Jamaica. They're like three important Jamaican milestones. The How Do They Come, Bob Marley, and Usain Bolt.
Yes.
And those three things are the memorable things of Jamaica. And the How Do They Come is still, we celebrated its 50th anniversary last year, and that was a big event as well. Again, so that film opened my eyes to the Rastafari culture,
Yes.
religion. Who are these crazy people that believe that an Ethiopian man is God? Why? And why do they wear their hair like that? And ganja? I mean, we were all smoking pot in London, you know, with pot, and we'd all be rolling up little strips. And, you know, at weekends, we were weekend hippies. But this ganja thing, serious? And they say it's their sacrament that makes them think of God? What? It sounded so crazy. I had to find out more because I've been growing up a very religious person, you know. I was baptized a Catholic. I went to, you know, church at school. In fact, I even played the organ at chapel at boarding school. Um, I stood up for Billy Graham when he came to Jamaica. I stood up. He said, "Do you want to be saved? If you want to be saved, step forward." I stood up and I stepped forward. But none of it meant anything really to me until Rastafari opened the seven seals. The seven seals, 2, 4, 6, 7. Rastafari opened the seven seals, and I could see, I could hear, I could smell, and
Yeah.
I could speak the truths of
Yeah.
what God was, what godliness was, what living the Christ life was supposed to be. Rastafari taught me these things, and that love was more than hate. I came back from England hating white people, you know. I vowed I would never speak to another white person in my life. I hated them because of all the racism. Rasta said, "No, Barbara, you can't do that. You know, you can't hate it no matter what. You can hate things that were done, but you can't hate people. You can't hate everybody. You have to love. Even the most hateful person has something lovable about them. You have to find that thing and deal with it while you ignore everything else. You know,
Yeah.
Rasta taught me about love and about loving and what it really meant. You know,
Yeah.
um, and I've been trotting that path since I came back home in 1972. I returned to Jamaica. I've been trotting that path and trying to be better and better every day at loving, because that's the instruction the Father gives us, you know, love. So I try my best to obey my Father Jah in heaven, in Zion. I try my best. I think that's what we're all supposed to do. And I try to do that, you know. I may be stupid. I don't know. I may be totally stupid, but
No.
that's what I do, you know? And Jaja loves me enough. He's given me all this life. He's given me so many years of life. He's
Yeah.
given me 82 of them so far.
Wow.
82. Yeah. Can you believe it?
No, I
I,
can't believe 82. I think you've got that wrong, Barbara.
I, I, I boast, darling. I do not hide my age
Wow.
because Jaja has given me 82 years of life. Ah, I get up every morning and thank him so much. Thank you, Jack. Yeah, give me more, please. You know? So,
Wonderful.
as I say, that's my liberty. That's my life. That's been my life, you know, ever since seeing Rastafari in 1971, I saw the movie. And it's just been there in my life in some way every day, every day.
My goodness. And that was, I was even going to you just answered my next question, because I was going to say that you obviously returned to Jamaica, and now Jamaica is your home. And I was going to ask, how did you become connected, involved with the Rastafari faith, and how has it changed your life? Well, you've just given me everything there, Barbara. So clearly it was a life-changing experience for you. Yeah.
Everyone expected me to come back and do the upper class thing that I'd been brought up to live. I mean, Beverly married the prime minister. We're best friends when she married. We've always been friends. And she went there, and there was Barbara. She would invite me to Jamaica House, and I couldn't come because I was on Warwick Hill keeping a youth club for the children there. Rasta's children on Warwick Hill. Warwick Hill was where Count Ozzy and the mystic revelation of Rastafari lived. My teacher, Dougie Mack, lived there. My teacher, my university was Warwick Hill. Rastafari was my PhD. So I decided to trot that path. Everybody thought I'm crazy and they ostracized me. You couldn't get a job, but it was good that I was a writer. So I would write articles, I would write columns. I lived as a freelance journalist. Sometimes I'd get a little job here or a little job there. And I survived. Jaja enabled me to survive. And in doing that, I did a good work for Rastafari. I was able to use my writing skills to explain what Rasta was to people. I could promote Marcus Garvey and write about him. I could explain what Rasta saw in Emperor Haile Selassie, the divinity of Emperor Haile Selassie, a man that J.A.G. Rogers, he wrote the book 100 Great Men of Color. He listed Emperor Haile Selassie as number 99. And he wrote all about him. And at the end of that chapter, his words were, "Behold the perfect man." That's what J.G. Rogers wrote at the end of that chapter. To us, he lived a perfect life. He lived a life that we could emulate. And as an example, the things he said, we repeat them, we quote them today. He's the man who said, "Until the color of a man's skin is of no more importance than the color of his eyes. Until then, there will be no peace." He says, "We're all born equal." He said those words. He said those words that are repeated every day. Anytime you want to quote against racism, you quote the emperor's words.
Yeah.
He was an example. He still is. And we who just study his life understand why. People can say, "Oh, you're crazy." It's okay. It's okay. People might say, "Oh, you're crazy," if you follow Jesus or if you follow Muhammad or whatever. But we all ask ourselves, what is God? What does God mean?
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
some of us answer it because some of us have confidence in believing there is a God because we know God examples in this earth.
Yeah.
And Emperor Haile Selassie is that, a God example that we love and we follow.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. It's a wonderful explanation, Barbara, because I know a lot of people probably don't know too much about the Rastafari faith, or they don't understand it. They don't know the history of it. So, I'm glad that you've shared that, because there is a lot of kind of misinformation about it, and there has been. So, for somebody that is living that life and has embraced that faith, it's lovely to hear it from you, explained in that way. Really, thank you for that. Thank you.
The emperor also, he brought us to Ethiopian Christianity. And when he saw that Rastas were worshiping him, he said, "No, Jesus Christus is who you must know." He sent his priest, the priest who gave him communion every morning. He sent him to Jamaica to teach us, to establish the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and teach us Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity. Ethiopia's Bible has 8 more books than King James's version, which was written so many centuries later. And Ethiopian Christianity is a way of worshiping God that's very similar to Christianity, but it's different. It's Ethiopian. And I am a baptized member of the Ethiopian Orthodox faith, and many Rastafari are as well. It's like you come in through Black Power, you go to Garveyism. Garveyism introduces you to Rastafari. Rastafari introduces you to Ethiopia, Ethiopian Christianity. So that's where I am. I'm at that step on the stairway to Zion, let me say. Yeah.
That takes us you go right back to your roots, don't you? Because that is where everything begins. So that makes perfect sense. Yes.
Thank you very much. The oldest country. I mean, they found the oldest Christian church, the remains of the oldest Christian church in Ethiopia, dating back to the 1st century. So I say, is that the church that Mary and Joseph took the baby to when they fled from Jerusalem? you know, and there is where the skyline, Axum, are, you know, the relics of Christianity. Everything is there in Ethiopia. What more could I want? Lalibela, the church of Lalibela, carved from the ground down. They say angels helped them carve it. How did they do that? How did they make a church carved from the rock down,
Yeah.
carved out inside, carved seats? How? They
Oh,
say
yeah.
angels did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Ethiopia. I love Ethiopian Christianity. I wear my cross, my Ethiopian cross every day. Don't take it off. Yeah.
That's wonderful, Bob. Oh my goodness. And that leaves me then, so talking about your Rastafari faith, then you became a Rastafarian representative in Jamaica, in the Jamaican Parliament. How did that happen?
Well, it's happened more because I was a journalist than because I was a Rasta. In 1983, the Prime Minister Edward Seaga called a general election. The leader of the opposition, Michael Manley, refused to let his party contest it because he said the electors list was incomplete. So they boycotted the election. Siaga said, yeah, I'll go ahead anyway. And he held the election. 60 candidates ran for 60 seats and 60. JLP won all 60 seats. So the
Wow.
House was now full, but the Senate needed to have an opposition to appoint the opposition senators. The Parliament could appoint 13 government senators, but there needed to be 8 opposition senators. So they consulted the Constitution, and the Constitution said it's not the opposition that appoints those senators, it's the Governor General. So recommendations for 8 persons was made to the Governor General, and I was the only woman and the only Rasta. I think I was selected because I've written in my usual way. I'd written a letter to the editor, first of all, saying that I agreed with Michael Manley for boycotting the election. And then when Siaga went along anyway, he said, I will, in this parliament of 60 seats, I will allow the facility where the public can address the parliament from the bar of the house. That's in the Constitution. So I wrote a letter saying, okay, I'm going to be one of those addressing the parliament from the bottom of the house. I think it was those 2 letters that caused someone to say, hey, look at this crazy Rasta woman. She writes well, she's intelligent. Let's appoint her. So I got appointed as an opposition, independent opposition senator. Independent, that is to say, not aligned to either political party. There were 8 of us. 3 were Queen's Counsels, 2 were university professors, 1 was a former mayor, and 1 was the former head of the Jamaica Agricultural Society. They were all employed persons. I was the only unemployed, taking the bus, you know, freelance writer. I was also pregnant
Oh,
with
wow.
my son. I had my son while I was a senator.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was how that all happened.
Oh, my
That
goodness.
made history and still does. There's never been another Rasta either appointed or winning a seat to sit in parliament. A lot of people now have dreadlocks. Dreadlocks is the fashionable hairstyle in Jamaica, but no one saying, I am a Rasta, I follow the Rastafari principles, and I believe in the divinity of Emperor Haile Selassie. There's never been another.
And
I
this,
hope there will be others because Rasta's supposed to run this country, you know. Rasta's supposed to
that.
rule Jamaica.
I believe
Yeah,
that.
and it makes sense of first either. And I know Bob Marley has said so also. But I don't know when or how that's gonna happen. But there needs to be more Rastas. There are Rasta voices, but when you have a voice inside the parliament, it's really more important. I
Yes.
see how important it is because I'm working with a very excellent member of parliament, the Minister of Culture, Olivia Babsy Grange, a wonderful, very hardworking woman. She has 4 ministries in one: culture, gender, entertainment, and sport.
Oh,
And I
wow.
don't know how she does it. She works till 12 o'clock every night and she handles her ministry beautifully. I see how she uses that power to be able to bring things to Parliament that become passed into law. I mean, she brought the clearing the records of all our national heroes and making them no longer have um, prison records. They're all cleared from Marcus Garvey right to Tacky. And then she brought another resolution for Tacky to be declared a public holiday on the 8th of April. I see how she uses that political power. I mean, we kept asking, make Tacky, give Tacky. She uses the power in Parliament. So I see why we need to have more people like me actually elected to Parliament to be able to do things. But in the meantime, we have good members of Parliament who we can bring our issues to and say, will you please bring this to Parliament and see if you can get it passed? And they've done that. They've done that. Rasta were asking, please, you know, Coral Gardens, do something about apologies for Coral Gardens. So eventually the Prime Minister brought that to Parliament at the urging of this same Minister of Culture. And the Prime Minister declared an apology for Coral Gardens and declared the establishment of a Coral Gardens fund, trust fund, as reparations for Coral Gardens to be administered by the Minister of Culture. So I see the importance of Parliament and, you know, how useful, how it's used to run our lives. Parliament, government. We're now about to abolish the monarchy as our head of government, head of state. And that's going to be, you know, that's a long process to move Prince Charles and what's her name, Queen Camilla, as head of our, oh gosh, head of state, please. You know, Queen Elizabeth was a nice old lady, leave it at that. But really, we can't envision, I mean, William and Kate were here last year and we told them, please, you know, reparations, give us some reparations. Then we can respect you. We will respect you if you respect the history of your family, your family's history. Respect us. Give us compensation for what you did. Not only did it harm us, it made you so rich. It made you so rich going way back to the 1400s, to the first King Charles. You know, come on. So I understand the power of Parliament. I understand the power. And I recommend it for all those of us that want to change our country in significant ways. Yes.
Are you still involved in Parliament, Barbara, or not so active, but obviously?
No, I'm not appointed, but I go often. I go whenever I want to. I'm invited when there are national events. As a former senator, they give me enormous respect. If I go to Parliament just because I want to hear what's happening, and if I go to Parliament to accompany minister for some work she's doing or for an issue she's brought up that has to do with the work I'm doing with her, I go to Parliament and I'm allowed to sit in the special place where former parliamentarians sit. And they all, you know, honor, we're pleased to acknowledge the presence in Parliament today of former Senator Barbara Blake Hanna. I get all that respect. But I don't want to be elected. I mean, my time to stand for Parliament has gone. I was invited by the PNP, I was invited by the JLP, but I prefer to be a Rasta. I prefer to be an independent Rasta, and I will use my voice and my pen to make my issues known and to bring them publicly and seek support from the general public that way. That's me, anyway.
Well, you opened the door, Barbara. So, you know, you're a trailblazer and a pioneer in that respect. So the door is open. We just have to go. You know, we have to go in and you know, make our mark. So thank you to you for that. You know, a lot of thanks.
Thank you for that.
I just have two more questions, and they're sort of quite sort of general questions. But what are you passionate about, Barbara? I know we've spoken about the Rastafari faith and you've spoken about your family. What are you passionate about?
Well, I express my passions in my books. I'm just launching my newest book through Red, Gold, and Green Spectacles. I write, the things I have written are for a purpose. I wrote about my life in England in Growing Out Black Hair and Black Pride. I think you can see it.
I can. I can see it. Yeah.
And then I wrote about my life coming back home as a Rasta in growing up, black hair, growing up, daughter of Jah. I wrote my book on homeschooling because I homeschooled my son.
Yeah.
Everybody thought I was crazy, but when I took him to an high school, they said, "Oh, he can read, Mrs. Hannah. How lovely! You will cut his hair, won't you?" And I said, "No, why?"
Good
So
grief.
I homeschooled him. He could read by the time he was 3. And
Wow.
then at 13, they said he was a genius. That's when everybody stopped saying, "Oh, you're crazy, Barbara." And so I wrote a book about homeschooling him, which has become the book for homeschooling parents. My homeschooling, Makonnen, set a trend for homeschooling that only Rastas had been sort of teaching their children at home because they didn't want to send them out into Babylon school. But this was showing you didn't have to be a Rasta to teach your child at home.
Yeah.
I've written 2 novels. One, I was inspired by Bob Marley, knowing him, to write a novel based on his life as it was then, as I knew him then. I knew him before he got married to Cindy Breakspeare. I knew him when he and Rita had really just separated. He was just becoming a well-known reggae star. Um, I wrote a novel inspired by his life. And then I wrote another novel inspired by the life of national heroine Nanny. That's called The Moon Has Its Secrets. Nanny was our heroine, but nobody knows her story. Nobody knows where she came from, what she did, just a general, maybe one sentence of history. But I read a book about the Maroons by Beverly Carey, and it inspired me. Nanny inspired me to write her story.
Oh,
Nanny inspired me. She said, "You write my story." And
wow.
I was inspired to write a fiction about Nanny.
Wonderful. My
This book
goodness.
now is a collection of some essays and articles, opinions I've written, and 2 research projects, one into the Coral Gardens incident and one into the mission to Africa, where 4 Rastafari and some government persons were sent to Africa to see whether the desire for repatriation was welcomed by the African nations. And they came back with reports saying, yes, they're happy to have us. In fact, they were invited back, and the Rastafari delegation, Emperor Haile Selassie, invited them to spend time in Ethiopia. They spent
Wow.
about 3 months there. So I've investigated those 2, the mission to Africa and the Coral Gardens incident. And then I've also included a short story, um, the story of Mr. Jones. Um, so that's all in this new book,
Wonderful. That's
Red,
wonderful.
Gold, and Green Spectacles. And it's very appropriate that I should launch it in Black History Month in this conversation with you, Dolores. I can't think of a better time and a better way to introduce this book to the world. You are so wonderful to be interviewing me. You know, the word thanks is such a small word, 5 letters, but I discovered some time ago what it means. The T stands for thousands. The H stands for heavenly. A, angels. N, non-stop. K, kingdom. S, songs.
Oh my goodness.
Thousands of heavenly angels, non-stop kingdom songs. And that's what's happening as I say thanks to you. Thousands of heavenly angels are singing non-stop kingdom songs to you for doing this interview with me.
Bless you.
Truly,
And I send
thanks.
that back to you, Barbara, for for giving us your time, because you are so special. And I love you dearly.
No,
You know that
no,
you're
no,
so special. And it's it's been an absolute pleasure. Absolute.
you honor me, darling. You honor me. Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. I have
So
one
this
question.
book is available at Amazon on order. And I hope a lot of people will read it because it has a lot to say, this issue of my comments.
So just to reiterate, Barbara's through Red, Gold and Green Spectacles, available on Amazon. That's Barbara's
Yes.
prayer. And I'm going to put that in the link at the bottom. And we also have Growing Out, Black Hair and Black Pride in the Swinging 60s. A
Yes.
wonderful book.
was wonderful. Bernadine Evaristo, when she heard that I'd been named, or a press award was named after me, she went online and found where I'd posted my original version of this growing out. And she said to Penguin, please let's publish it in our Writing Black series. And Penguin did just that. Thank you, Penguin. Thank you, Bernadine Evaristo, winner, Black British winner of the Booker Prize, a lovely writer. I've read all her novels. You should read her books. Wow, she has the most fabulous collection of novels. You should read them. She has one about slavery in which the slaves are white people and the slave masters are black. Yes, she reverses the whole thing. It's the funniest and the most intelligent book on slavery. Yes, you have to read
I'll make a point.
You should find it. Bernadine Evaristo, thank you for this book, my darling. Thank you, sister.
You're welcome. Let me just turn this light on, Barbara, so I can, the light is fading a little bit here. That's better. Ah, that's better. And yes, and your other book, you said you have another book to the left of you. It was Growing Up, wasn't it? Daughter of Jah. Yeah?
Yes, yes.
So I'll put the links for all of those, Barbara, and you know, yes.
Can you see?
I
Yes.
can see it. Yes.
That's the story of me. That's after this. I leave England, come to Jamaica, and start growing up. I was growing out my hair, my black hair. Now I'm growing up into the person I'm supposed to be. I was a child before that. I'm growing up now. I'm becoming a Rasta woman, a Rasta. Growing up, a Jamaican. I'm becoming a Jamaican Rasta woman. Girl, I said yes, but woman, mother, becoming a mother, all those things. Child, girl, woman, mother, all those important things we as females can undergo. Yes, fulfilling. Yes, yes.
Wonderful, Barbara. Thank you so much. I just have one final question for you, and again, it's a very general one. What are your hopes for the future? You know that we're living in some very, very strange times now, but what are your hopes as a Rastafari, as a mother, with everything that you've done, an author, everything that you've done in your career? What are your hopes for the future? Yeah, I know.
That the world would change, the world would know love, that racism would end, that all the hatred could go. If only people realized the power of love, if only we could make this the perfect earth it's supposed to be. You know, if only Jamaica could just do that. Bob Marley, Rasta, Garvey, Selassie have all shown us we are here, Jah really make ya in Jamaica. We need this little island that everybody loves so much. That's the most perfect place on earth. We could set an example for the world to follow. I know it's a really, it's pie in the sky, but if you ask me what I would really want, a perfect world, a perfect world where the children don't cry, little babies don't die like I see them suffering over there in North Africa. Call the country what you will. Where there's a war happening now between this side and that side, and little children are suffering so terribly. It's sad. I can't watch any of the news. I can't watch it. I can't see the little children suffer. I want a world where children don't cry anymore. I want a world where people in the streets of Kingston don't beat their little children till the children are saying, mercy, mama, mercy, I beg you for mercy, mama. One time I had to shout out to a woman, you see, like how you don't have mercy, it's the same way God not going to have mercy when you're dead.
Yes.
And she stopped.
It's true.
Yeah. I want a perfect world.
Oh,
ask me what I want. Give me a perfect world. I don't want money. I don't want long life. I want a perfect world. Please.
I agree
Please.
with you, Barbara. I agree with you. Well, it's that bit more perfect with you in it, you know, so, and everything that you've done. And as I said, you know, it's been an absolute pleasure knowing you and an honor knowing you, Barbara. I know we've had many, many conversations. And again, in this is coming up to our last week now of Black History. So it has been just wonderful to speak to you, to hear about you, and to hear maybe some things that I didn't know. And it's just been absolutely delightful, Barbara. And I can't thank you enough. And
Dolores, I love you so much,
I
darling.
love you too.
Thank
I
you for
hope
this
we do it again
wonderful
soon.
conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you,
so
Barbara.
very much.
And
Love you,
we'll keep
darling.
in
Love
touch,
you.
and I will, when I publish this, it will be it will be an article, and I'll also I need to edit this a little bit because I had to go up to answer the doorbell and a couple of other things, so I'll edit this a little bit, put that on as well, Barbara. But it's been a joy, and I hope to do it again soon for you, my darling. My love, and thank you,
One
Barbara.
love. One
Thank you
love.
so
One
much.
love.
Take care,
Love
Barbara.
you.
Bye
Love
bye.
you.
Thank you.